less frequent basis. And we'll talk a little bit later about the frequency of how you can get data into the warehouse as well. So some of the pros and cons, if you're going with a direct connect approach, again, we put here red, yellow, and green doesn't necessarily mean in this slide it's possible or not possible. It's really just how kind of painful or where there's more work involved or more technical elements to be considered. So end user experience, as I mentioned, the key, since the semantic layer is still going to be part of the equation with or without a data warehouse, the end user experience would probably be very close to the same because that work is going to be done in the semantic layer. With the data warehouse, again, you're still doing business logic in the semantic layer to calculate time-based measures and other logic. It just, those calculations may be easily or more intuitively defined with a warehouse than they might be without. So that's why that on the direct side is a little more complicated to build those out. Then the next thing, real time. Again, if you're going to connect directly to your transactional systems, I mean it's real time. If there's a record and there's data in the system and you're pulling from it and you refresh a query, at that moment whatever's in the system is going to be in your report. When you go to the data warehouse, more near real time updates, now it's going to be some interval. Could be seconds. It could be minutes. In some cases, depending on how you structure your data warehouse, some parts of it may only be able to be uploaded nightly. So you have to weigh that into it's not going to be real time. There is no real time data warehousing. It's all going to be near real time. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we approach that at the end of today's session. IT involvement. Either way, if you're going to implement BI from scratch on your own, there's going to be IT involvement no matter what you do. Definitely from the data warehouse perspective, it's a different, I guess, type of user that needs to build and maintain the data warehouse, the ETL type content, much more technical than you might be able to achieve with a direct type environment. So definitely more technical resources on the data warehouse approach. Multiple data source integration. Again, if you're going with the data warehouse approach and you're feeding from all your applications to one central data warehouse repository, then you're in essence building your layers of BI on top of that one repository, and the data can be tied and massaged and manipulated and modeled in a way that makes that integration much more seamless. You can still integrate data in any BI environment from multiple data sources, just depending upon how that data needs to be integrated. May require some extra steps on the BI side to make that work. Again, it's back to the concept of is it all or one, one, or is it some type of hybrid of the two? Maybe if you have a small set of requirements that require the integration of data, maybe you kind of have a little mini data warehouse for some of those requirements, and then you're going with the direct for other parts. But really, it all depends on, again, what your specific requirements are. Query performance. I would argue that obviously you can model the data in a data warehouse to maximize performance. If there's some restrictions on how you might be able to tune your transactional system, and you may have limitations on what you can do there. But we've run very large volumes of data through both the direct and data warehouse. And in some cases, direct outperforms data warehouse, and sometimes data warehouse outperforms direct. But it's not something that's guaranteed to get better performance on the data warehouse, and it all depends again on some other factors that come into play. Obviously, the costs, the data warehouse adds extra elements to the overall equation and extra work and extra maintenance, so it all adds up. It's going to be definitely more costly that route. But for the right profile customer, it could be the best long-term strategy, and that's just kind of where you have to define for each organization what makes the most sense for you. Probably starting to sound a little bit like a broken record here, but do I need a data warehouse? Skip through this pretty quick. The key things of where yes is definitely if you have very experienced deep IT staff, multiple JD Edwards instances that need to be reported on, integration of non-JD Edwards data with JD Edwards data, or just multiple data sources together heavily, large volumes of data, large budgets. These are things where yes, a data warehouse makes a lot of sense. If you run a real lean IT department, and we have some JD Edwards customers that have one or two people in IT that support all applications JD Edwards and non-JD Edwards. It's a little bit more of a difficult sell there. So lean IT staff, so you have only one instance of JD Edwards, accelerated time frames, limited BI budgets, then it may be something that may be beyond the scope of something that a company like that should tackle, at least in the short term, until they expand in some of those areas. Otherwise, they'll be outsourcing a lot of consulting to third parties. So it all depends, again, where you want to be able to maintain internally. Things to consider, again, impacted transactional processing. Either way, there's no real way, because if you need to, in a data warehouse, you need to feed from the transaction system to the warehouse. At some point, you're going to have to grab that data and feed it. Under the near real-time data warehousing, where you're actually grabbing from the logs, potentially if you're journaling data or have logs running, you can pull from the logs to lower that impact to the transactional system. But there's still going to be something going on to grab and feed the data. So it's something to consider and potentially explore and examine. Performance, again, is another thing that looking at your different options on the two different approaches, and like I said, I can't say it's not a one answer for everybody that performance is always going to be better one way or the other, but just something that should always be considered. And then the integration of data. I mean, that's a big one. If you have lots of different data, lots of different environments and applications that need to be not just reported on, I don't look at that as really being integrated. I mean here by integration, where data from one environment needs to be tightly knit with data from another, and so you're going to have to do some work to make those fit in the same set of data and tables and whatnot.